in the theme Investment, Environment and Market Expansion. The session will be of about 1 hour and 30 minutes. And for this session, we have 5 research papers. I would like to read the name of research paper and the name of the presenter, first of all. The first research paper is Tourism Entrepreneurs, Expectation from the Federal Government in Touristic City of Nepal, a cross-sectional analysis. To be presented by Mr. Niranjan Devkota. Second research paper is Creating Investment Environment for Sustainable Development, a study of Indian investment policies, which is to be presented by Ms. Vaisali Pagaria. The third research paper is Changing Political Economy of Regional Integration, a case study of Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Pakistan, to be presented by Monica Verma. Fourth research paper is Public Choice and Equitable Access to Market Opportunities, Rethinking Regulatory Approach to Community-Owned Business Selling Himalayan Natural Products, to be presented by Mr. Sam Kumar Thapa. And the fifth research paper is Impact of Double Taxation Avoidance Agreement, DTAA, on foreign direct investment in Nepal, to be presented by Umesh Raj Rimal and Bisal Kumar Chalise. And for this session, due to some personal work, the two research paper presenter are not able to make it, so we'll be having the research paper presentation of presentation by three presenter. And for this session, we had invited Ms. Yom Kumari Khatiwada, Secretary of Government of Nepal, as a chair of the session, but due to her sudden emergency work, she is also not able to make it for the conference. So we have with us a discussant. So first of all, I would like to invite our discussant, Mr. Puspa Sharma, Deputy Executive Director of SOTI, to be on the dais. Let's give a round of applause. I would like to give a short introduction of Mr. Puspa Sharma. Mr. Puspa Sharma is the Deputy Executive Director of SOTI, that is South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment. He has been researching and publishing in the area of trade and development for the past 15 years. He has authored and edited research reports, book chapters, policy briefs, briefing papers, and articles on trade and development issues, including on regional economic integration in South Asia. Mr. Sharma recently completed his PhD in public policy from the Australian National University. He holds an MA in economics awarded by the Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and an MA in global finance, trade and economic integration awarded by the University of Denver, Colorado. He is an alumnus of the Fulbright program and the Australia Awards Scholarship Program. Now, giving a brief introduction of our discussion, Mr. Puspa Sharma, I would like to request our discussion to take over this session and call our first research paper presenter, Mr. Niranjan Devkota, for his paper presentation.
Here today, but Uday Raj Sharma is not here yet. Okay, allow me to take a little bit more time today, because as I come to know that little bit time I can have more to finish this paper, so that it will be much more clear with the group. Okay, sir, thank you. So this is group work. What we are thinking in our mind is how the entrepreneurs' expectation has grown as per the new federal system has established in the country, so that in this arena we are planning this paper. So this is our one of the paper from the series that we are disseminating here. There are few more other papers definitely including in this, so that this could be little bit not much all comprehensive, but we are trying to synthesize all the parts of the governance and this entrepreneurs' expectation from them by this paper. Please allow me to go with the next content. The target of the government is to reach 22 million by 2020. 1 million has already been set. But still the concern is that our GDP contribution by tourism is just 4%. Only 45,000 direct employment was there though it has already been 6 decades that the formal tourism arrival in Nepal passed. And as I told, 15 plans set 3.5 million direct jobs, 10% GDP, and 15 days length of stay. Now, much more to go with tourism sector, private sector, and hands on hands. Now, if we closely look at our tourism sector, it is something like adventure, culture, and nature based. So we have to think that particular set and arena to develop and enhance this sector. Administrative work in that time, but if we look at the post 1990s, especially after 2000, almost all the tourism activities is based on the tourism activities made by government is based on the evidence-based, activities-based things rather than making development of department and all. So tourism, the dimension of tourism can be categorized in this because there are so many visit year, visit destination or street program and many other development and expansion activities were carried out during this period. We can see tourism is always growing in number in the context of Nepal. But the tragedy is that we have only length of stay between 11 to 13 days for the whole time period. You can see the 6 decades tourism arrival, that too is tragic year 2001, that is because of Maoist insurgency in Nepal, and 2015 of course it is because of the great massive earthquake. But tourist is the Dera tourism reveals that it has good future. Tourists love Nepal to visit, but still among that tourists visited in Nepal, more than 1/3 visit Pokhara, and definitely Pokhara is important part of the tourism. That's what we set our study. We pilot our survey in Pokhara. Why Pokhara? Because nowadays for the internal tourist, I am very much interested to go to Pokhara, because if I go to Pokhara, I can go many other touristic places immediately. But if I go to another touristic destination, I only supposed to go there and come back and go to another place. Because of that, also Pokhara is getting more popular, and we try to see what Pokhara has done from the both government sector and private sector. Definitely, government sector has done lots of work to make the environment in Pokhara, and private sector also established their enterprises business to support tourism. And we found somehow 6,000 tourism entrepreneurs in private bases were located in Pokhara, and there are so many varieties that is only especially preparing for the comfort of tourists. Now, the important part is most of the tourism entrepreneurs run by private sector, and provincial government system is just new. Now, that's what the concern is there, whether they are happy with the provincial system or previous government system, what they are supposed to be, or what is their expectation from the new government in terms of their development, the area's development, and the overall development of tourism in Nepal. So this research problem is, as I already mentioned, that because Ghimire argues government has no clear policy, but I don't believe much on that, because I believe government do have very clear policy. Maybe that is weak in the implementation part. And the Jones made research for Nepalese context, and Jones observed poor partnership between all level of governments. So that we are trying what is the expectation of the people from the federal government in order to protect socio-cultural norms, so that they can strengthening their tourism business for the long time, and for sustainability. This method, we are basically doing descriptive analysis, because many questions were of subjective types, and other few questions were of yes and no, so that we are not going with the inferential analysis because it won't fit. Our study area is Pokhara city. We name it a touristic city. Definitely it is. And we make purposive sampling, because as I already told, we cluster out, there were 6,000 investors or entrepreneurs, but we don't have clear name of them. We try to get which, but we are not getting it, so that we did it in purposive sampling. And by purposive sampling, 493 respondents were observed. I think 493 or 393? 393, sorry for that. And we use a full structure questionnaire for this purpose. And we perform two types of analysis, that is descriptive analysis and SWOT analysis based on the question. Later on I will come to the question. So if we look at the result, most of them are youth. Almost all of them are youth, and something like 68% range in between 21 to 40 years, means the entrepreneurs are quite young and vibrant. They are very much enthusiastic for the investment and for their livelihood. And something like 3 out of 4 is male. Still, we have some sort of problem with the entrepreneurship. Yesterday, I saw in Kanpur that 33% of the female were entrepreneurship. In some part, that is the good news. My one colleague is sharing, means definitely 33% still. There is also female, means we can grow entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship with a good policy. But I'm not touching that part. And 7 out of 10 is married, and definitely almost all of them are educated. And this is the good symbol. When they are educated, policies, programs, and many other things can be implemented very easily. So this is one good report. This box plot, I just want to check by box plot what is the variation between registered and non-registered business experience. We found very few people were not registered, something like 10% or less. Otherwise, all they were registered. If I said non-registered entrepreneurs, means they might be cafe, or they might be tea shop and other very small shops. They were existing over there. So enhancement of the global advertising can be supporting part. Business security, because 19.2% reveal that business security is very important, because if the competition is high, or if there is some other sort of business exists, they might be displacing themselves, or they cannot competition on preservation of cultural values. If we look at the point very closely, as they are demanding development and conservation of tourist points. Let me say, what is tourist point? For the Pokhara, could be Fewa Lake is a tourist point, Mahendra Cave is a tourist point, or Sarankot is a tourist point. Now, it should be preserved. I don't know in which means or service that should be made good for the tourists, because in many literatures we found tourists don't want to negotiate with the people. Whatever they come with the price, they are sticky with their price. And minimize.
Please note it down. You might read it later on, and we will all bring that up in the final round. Thank you, Niranjanji. I'll hold my comments and everything, because I have to play the role of discussant as well. So I'll do that in, when all the presentations are done. So next we have Ms. Vaishali Pagaria. Is she here? No? Okay, so that means we are missing out all 3 papers there, because we are sure that we don't have the 3rd paper by Monica Verma, Changing Political Economy of Regional Integration, and also we don't have the 4th one by Shyam Kumar Thapa, Public Choice and Equitable Access to Market Opportunities.
It assessing the impact of double taxation avoidance agreements that country sign on foreign direct investment. So I'll straight go into what DTA means. For those of you who do not know, double taxation agreement is a agreement type of international taxation agreement that countries sign bilaterally or regionally or multilaterally to avoid simultaneous tax payments by taxpayers. So when some investors invest in other country, for example, and they receive some income from activities or assets, they are taxed in that home country. But when they repatriate their profit, if there is no double taxation agreement, that income is also considered income of the home country as well. So there is a situation of the double taxation. So if someone from, say, Germany invest in Nepal, they do some business, they earn profit, so the government of Nepal would tax on that income. But when that German entrepreneur would repatriate their profit, German government would also consider that as an income, and according to the German tax law, they will be taxed if Nepal and Germany do not have the DTA agreement, right? So that's to avoid that kind of double taxation for the taxpayer earning from the same income in two jurisdictions. So that's called like a source versus residential principle of taxation. So what basically these taxation agreement do is it signals if there is a tax agreement, it signals the entrepreneurs or the investor that, okay, so whatever income I have earned would not be taxed. So it kind of promotes investment into home country or both countries. So that's kind of the benefit of double taxation agreements, which basically the FDI, flowing from countries. And then with the FDI, there are lots of spillover like employment creation, transfer of technology, transfer of know-how, and all those other benefits. But there is a cost because you are not taxing some of the activities that happen within your jurisdiction. Then there is a situation of loss of tax base or the revenue loss for the government. So this is what it is. So over the years, the double taxation agreements among the countries has increased, especially after 1990s. They have increased drastically. You can see, it started almost from post-World War, and then after 1980s or 1990s, it has actually increased dramatically. I mean, exponentially. Countries, two developing countries, are also entering into this kind of agreement. So there is basically the idea is like the countries are signing more DTAs in recent time. If you see the South Asian context, India has signed a larger number of. This is 2008. It's bit dated data, but I couldn't find the aggregated more recent data. But I'm sure that the number has gone up since then. So India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, they have signed DTA. Nepal has signed. Actually, Nepal has signed 10 DTA when we collected the data. Recently, they have signed it with Bangladesh. So, but I have not included them because they have signed, I think, in early 2018, and then I have the data till late 2017. So this is the condition, South Asian context in terms of DTA agreements. So Nepal has signed, apart from Bangladesh, as I said, which signed very recently. Nepal has signed DTA with 10 countries, which were signed during that period. If you see, the most of the DTAs were signed with either European countries or the Asian countries, especially the South Asian or the very nearby countries. Yeah, so that's the condition. So my question simply is, so that's the major objective of the signing of the DTA is to attract foreign investment, to tell them that, okay, so if you invest here, you will not be taxed in two jurisdictions. So that's one of the objectives of DTA. So my question simply is, does this, if you sign DTA, does that attract more investment, or simply put, just because of signing an DTA, how much FDI can you attract? So that's the basic question of this paper. Oops. Yeah, so this is the period where Nepal signed the WTO agreement, maybe this is the period where we had the peace process started. So the FDI flow has increased drastically after the peace accord was signed. Before that, you can see it's pretty flat since 1980. So this is the FDI, but I start we need to examine that with an econometric model. So this is what it is. So our main variable of interest here is if this tax treaty is actually DTA, so that DTA is our main variable of interest, and we are actually regressing it with the FDI, saying that whether tax treaty has impact. So this is our dependent variable, this is its main independent variable. What we are trying to say here is whether tax has any impact on FDI, right? But the FDI is impacted by various other factors, right? It's not just the DTA, it's so many other factors that impacts DTA, right? For example, market size, right? If we are growing or not. If Nepal is growing, there will be more DTA. If not, then there is no point in bringing the foreign direct investment because you are not making any money. So market size is one of the things. Same with the growth prospect. Political stability is another factor which attracts or impacts foreign direct investment. General optimism, openness. Openness simply means the connectivity, how well connected we are through various channels, right? It is very good, very essential for trade and other. So what is the labor cost? What is our productivity? What is the political risks, infrastructure, other agglomeration effects? What is our ease of doing business? So all these other factors which impact FDI are actually controlled for. So this is the basic setup of our study. So we use all the secondary data to answer this question. So the main data of FDI is actually extracted from Ministry of Industries. So they publish the FDI data every year from every country. But those FDI data are actually the FDI committed. So when foreign firm come to Nepal and they set up their shop, so they have to register in Nepal and they have to say that this is the amount of FDI we're going to bring actually while registering it. So this FDI data is actually a commitment of FDI. We do not really have the actual, how much actual money actually came in. So in lieu of that, we are using this data, which pretty we are pretty sure like it shows the preference of investing in Nepal. So it indicates that earlier that it brings FDI, but it also create a loss, a tax loss for the government. So I kind of calculated, this is pretty pretty small kind of exercise that we did. So in case of Nepal, so one of the clauses of Nepal DTA is that it provides a concession of a tax concession to airlines industry. So which basically means if we have a DTA with a country and airlines is flying from that country to Nepal, the 5% tax that government of Nepal charges is basically waived off. And same applies to the airlines flying from Nepal to that countries. Basically, if say Thailand, right? So Thai Airways, we have a DTA with Thailand, and the Thai Airways fly to Nepal, and Nepal Airlines fly to Thailand, right? So for all the Thai flights and all the Thai passenger and the tickets, Nepal government would waive 5% charge on those tickets. Right, so it's a benefit for the Thai Airways because they don't have to pay taxes in Nepal because we have signed DTA. But that's also benefit for Nepal because Nepal Airlines also fly Oman and other countries. So before signing those DTA, rather than signing it just to sign it, we need to have the cost-benefit analysis of all the economic relations. So I've just shown one airlines industry, but what other economic relations we have, what are the benefits that we can get. Okay, so if we are gonna forego our tax base, can we benefit from the FDI through creation of the employment and other benefits? So all those kind of things should be considered before actually signing off the details. So that's our first policy recommendation, and we are not sure about whether we are getting benefit from signing a DTA with Norway, Qatar, Austria, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. We can see that there's not much economic relation that exists. So we are not sure. I don't know whether they can reverse the agreement, but there's something food for thought that should be given to those DTA rather than just maintaining and signing it. So that's our policy recommendation. So that ends my presentation. I'll happy to receive your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishalji. So, first the paper talks about provincial government. It also talks about federal government at some places. It also talks about local government. So, it's not very clear exactly which level of government the paper is trying to look into and why. When I say that why question, I think that had some importance because in the new political context, as we all know, the different levels of government have different roles to play in different sectors. Tourism might be one, right? So if you look at the constitution, if you look at the other legislation that have been put in place, how have the roles of the government been, distinguished in terms of the work that they need to do to develop the tourism sector? If we have some sort of that background, that might give the paper a foothold where to stand on, and then move further to look for what actually is the research problem and the research question. For example, in one of the literature that the paper has cited and that was also presented, that was a work by Jones, who says that there is poor partnership between the local, provincial and central government. I think that's a very important maybe problem that could be identified by the paper. And stepping on this particular problem, that there is poor coordination between the three levels of government, the paper could have built on identifying what the problem is, and then looking at the literature, and then the framework that you would want to develop to have a look at this particular problem, and then moving on to the issues. That's why I think there is some problem in terms of the consistency that is maintained in the paper. As I read through the paper, I sort of found myself lost at times and I was trying to think myself about what exactly is this paper trying to know. What is the contribution to knowledge that the paper is trying to make? This comes very clearly when we look at the SWOT analysis, for example, because SWOT analysis in some way gives a background picture about what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, opportunities and threats. But if you think about the SWOT analysis that the paper has made with the topic of the paper about the tourism entrepreneurs' expectation, there is some sort of a mismatch, I would say, because the SWOT analysis will give you what the strengths are, what the threats are, what the opportunities are, right? What the weaknesses are. But how does that relate with the expectation that you are trying to judge, that you are trying to measure? That is something that I didn't find very clear in the paper. So maybe SWOT analysis can be used as a backgrounder again, and then the research framework might have to build on something else to explore the particular problem that you have identified. And in the SWOT analysis, I think there is also some confusion in the weaknesses and threat part. For example, in the weaknesses part, the analysis talks about like westernization. I would see westernization as a threat rather than a weakness itself. Because when we say weakness, then we tend to see about what are the weaknesses that Pokhara has in terms of developing tourism, right? So westernization is not a weakness of Pokhara. I would think in that particular way. And the paper itself says that westernization has put a threat to the socio-cultural values, and several other things. So that is also something that the paper might have to look into when you are doing the SWOT analysis. And there are also a few other things. I wouldn't go into the details of all those because when you revise the paper based on these broad comments, I think those minor things will definitely be revised by the authors themselves. So I won't go into those details. So all in all, it's an interesting topic, and it's a very important topic and a very valid topic in the present time, given the political context we are in. But
Before than incorporating it, we will discuss once in our group and then decide whether this area and sector could develop or not, because this is very genuine comment that definitely we got insight upon. So it is much more advantage. Regarding all this whole analysis and all, we check the previous papers and we find out that is the practice, so that we try to put in order. But maybe, as sir said, what could be beneficial for in this particular paper in the background rather than in the result section. So definitely that we will discuss about. And we will add the role of the government in the different sector. Then only again we reformulate our questions, because we already have data. Data can be reassessed.
Exploring the linkages between heritage and tourism and its economic potentialities. So from that perspective, I actually found your paper very interesting. But I think there are a couple of areas further to what Puspa sir added. My own observations also, which I think may be useful. I don't know the status of your paper, whether it's completed or whether still you're working on it. I also found SWOT analysis, actually, whether it's the right fit for analyzing this one. You said you wanted the entrepreneur's perspective. You were analyzing entrepreneur's perspective in terms of the opportunities or the challenges in the changed political system now. So from that perspective, whether the pestle analysis or political, at least political economic analysis would have been a better tool for you rather than SWOT analysis. Because for me, SWOT analysis is actually analyzing internal factors and external factors. If you were doing, for example, the tourism board of Pokhara was doing this exercise, the SWOT analysis for them would have been to analyze the internal and external factors. But for your study, I think the pestle analysis, or at least the political economic analysis, would have been better, because we are talking here about the economic dimensions of this industry.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
And the second thing I found is, I found you were referring to culture. Maybe you should refer the term, analyze the term as a much broader stage, taking reference to heritage. When we talk about heritage, then it's both tangible and intangible heritage. So culture usually comes, we can add it in intangible heritage side, something that we live on. So that's my only suggestion, actually, whether or not that will be something interesting. And then I was not so clear whether you were talking only to the provincial and whether you had analysis of the local government, because maybe it's out of your study area, but for me the policy level interventions are from the provincial level.
Yeah, definitely.
But from local level you have both policy and the interventions. So did you miss the local level in, interventions purposely or unintentionally? I was not so much clear. And my last observation was on this westernization. Whose observation was this? And is it important? Because if it is then, for example, observation of the local people, or it is an observation of the entrepreneurs themselves,
It's
and
an
should,
entrepreneur.
and should we be at all concerned about westernization? Because for me, tourism is an industry where we don't think, where we don't export things. But we consider it as an export industry because we bring the clients or the customers to these industries where we produce these goods and services. And here, if we try to just showcase what we have and try to block the value systems from where they come, I think it will be a mismatch. What we should be concerned about is then whether the westernization or the value system of the Western culture is in conflict of the local society's culture or something. But otherwise westernization, because I think that has to happen. Because when we talk about industry, it is the exchange of the culture, the values of the different societies, host society and the guests who are coming in. So I think the westernization, should that be a concern, is only my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, shall I respond to you first?
Written culture with its language, link up and all, now we have to rethink whether heritage can be replaced by the culture can be replaced by the heritage or not. In third case, definitely we look at the provincial government, but the people is entrepreneurs of Pokhara. I think this is Leknath metropolitan city, of course, because all it covers. Pokhara now covers almost within Leknath metropolitan city, so that they were even with the local government. But we are doing 2 more papers that I'm going to disseminate. We both are going to disseminate in next week in Surkhet. So there we are talking about westernization, its effect. We use logic model as sir used. We use the random effect panel. He is using fixed effect panel. Now we did all that things, but what we only bring here is what is the prospects of entrepreneurs to their governance, to their
orders, or how did it change, then the recommendation would have been more fruitful, I guess. And the later question is about westernization. Like you have given it in trade and business, but we need to see it from the opportunity side as well, because most of the entrepreneurs in Pokhara, like they have clubs and bars, etc., handicrafts and everything. So for them, it could be like act as an opportunity. So we need to see from that aspect.
Any other questions on the tourism paper? Maybe there aren't more questions on the tourism paper, so thank you, Niranjan. Maybe we'll hand over the mic to Vishalji for his response.
Our major limitation. Central bank, Nepal Rashtra Bank would publish the data, but we could not find the data for like at that detail, like for all the country, like since 1990 till now, of all the countries. So that's kind of the limitations that we have to create that panel. So we didn't want to miss out on what we have. So that's why we continue to use the yes, of course, the lagged one is something that we can further try. Even with the same data, we can kind of create the lag and see whether that would make a difference to the results. And that relates to the dynamism as well. So yes. Other things like a sectoral studies are important, right? So actually after this study, the Minister of Finance commissioned us a further study to explore those kind of not sectoral but country-wide but more detailed analysis of the new kind of DTA, and we found that out of 13 countries that we explored, I mean we examined, only 2 were coming out as a kind of viable to sign DTA, UK and Japan. So yeah, so those kind of sectoral studies are also important as a way out. Yeah, so that's kind of quick response to your comments.
First of all, I would like to appreciate and thank you from the research findings that you could recommend some good policy recommendation to the government of Nepal. And similarly, I have one curiosity whether it's related, you come across while you're doing a digital literature review or not. I have one curiosity is that FD was called FDI. Have you find some gap?
You come forward to. About the sectoral analysis, as Pushpa sir said, I was actually, I know the limitations of your study, but yesterday I was asking a question, for example, if we are to attract investment, then what are the tools for us to identify those sectors of our economy where we have comparative advantage or more sorts of competitive advantages? And I think, as you discussed earlier, the further studies looking into this issue using this kind of model, analyze those areas of the economy where we have competitive advantage would definitely be, this kind of tool would be definitely the most precious tool for us for taking data-based decisions in identifying